Before the first map was drawn, before the first colony rose, before the first treaty was broken, there was a world alive with nations whose stories stretched across thousands of years, a world where diplomacy ruled long before kingdoms formed in Europe, a world filled with brilliance, innovation, and unimaginable resilience. This is the chapter history books summarize in a paragraph, but today we open the pages fully. From the Pacific coast to the Atlantic shores, from the Great Plains to the southern deserts, this land was home to civilizations as old as any on Earth. And tonight, we begin the journey to rediscover them. You're watching Untold American Legends, and this is Episode 1, The First Footsteps, The Forgotten World Before the Storm. Long before Europeans ever set foot on the American continents, the land was far from empty. It was not wilderness, it was home. Archaeologists know that Native American ancestry reaches back at least 20,000 years, with some evidence suggesting even longer. Over countless generations, communities adapted to mountains, forests, deserts, plains, and coastlines, each shaping a distinct culture, language, and understanding of the world. There were hundreds of nations, some small, some vast, some nomadic, some urban, building cities larger than in any Europe at the time. Cahokia, near modern-day St. Louis, once held more than 20,000 people. Massive mounds, complex political structures, trade routes running for thousands of miles. And Cahokia was only one center of native innovation. To the southwest, the ancestral Pueblo engineered stone cities rising from canyon walls, structures aligned with astronomical precision. To the east, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy created one of the oldest participatory democracies, a system that would later influence the U.S. Constitution. To the Pacific Northwest, complex societies thrived on fishing, carving totem histories into living memories. To the southeast, Mississippian cultures established ceremonial centers, vast farms, and elaborate governance. What did everyday life look like in this world before European ships appeared on the horizon? It depended on the region. On the plains, communities followed the great bison herds and developed unmatched horsemanship, although horses themselves arrived later with the Spanish. In the forests of the Northeast, agriculture thrived. Corn, beans, squash, the three sisters, grown in harmony. In the Arctic, Inuit peoples mastered survival in one of the harshest climates on Earth, building knowledge passed down over generations. On the coasts, fishing and canoe building shaped identity. In deserts, irrigation systems transformed harsh landscapes into farmland. Everywhere there were artists, warriors, farmers, diplomats, traders, storytellers, spiritual leaders. And at the heart of it all was something Europeans would struggle to understand. Land was not owned, it was shared, respected, protected. It belonged not to the living, but to the ancestors and the unborn. This worldview would clash violently with European ideas of private property. Across the Atlantic, Europe was rising, and it was hungry. Population booms, wars, class divides, religious conflict, economic struggle, competition between empires, Spain, Portugal, France, England, the Netherlands. Each dreamed of wealth, land, and global dominance. But Europe had a problem. It was running out of room. The Atlantic became an open invitation, a gamble, a chance to reshape the future. When Europeans looked west, they saw opportunity. But what they didn't see, what they didn't understand, was that the land they imagined as unclaimed was already a mosaic of nations. The earliest meetings were not always hostile. Sometimes they were moments of wonder. Indigenous fishermen approaching strange ships, curious glances, gift exchanges, mutual attempts at communication. But beneath the surface, the two worlds were already moving in different directions. Native nations often viewed Europeans as temporary visitors, men from across the sea who would trade, leave, and perhaps return seasonally. Europeans, however, came with a different intention, not to visit, not to trade, but to claim. And with them came something far destructive than swords or guns. Before the first musket was fired, before the first treaty was broken, before the first war was declared, a silent enemy swept across the land. Diseases Europeans didn't even realize they carried. Smallpox, measles, influenza, typhus. To native nations with no immunity, these illnesses were catastrophic. In some regions, up to 90% of the population perished. Imagine entire villages gone, leaders lost, families devastated, histories disrupted. The demographic collapse weakened political structures and destabilized alliances, making native nations more vulnerable just as European settlements began to grow. And Europe mistook destiny for destiny. Some colonists wrote that God was clearing the land for them, but the truth was simpler. Disease, not divine intervention, changed the balance of power. Two civilizations now stood face to face, and the foundations of each were incompatible. Europeans believed in land ownership. Native nations believed in land stewardship. Europeans believed in centralized authority. Many native nations valued consensus. Europeans believed treaties were tools of convenience. Native nations believed treaties were sacred. These differences weren't small, they were tectonic. And soon those tectonic plates began to grind. By the early 1600s, small settlements became towns. Towns became colonies. If you believe these stories matter, if you want the truth to reach more people, make sure to subscribe, share, and return for Episode 2, Contact Turns to Conflict, because the story of America is not a single legend, it is many, and only now are we beginning to tell them. In the next episode, the tension turns to flames, the early wars ignite, conflicts spread, diplomacy falters, and the continent enters a century of unrest. This is a history too important to forget and too powerful to ignore. You've been watching Untold American Legends. What began as curiosity was becoming confrontation, and the storm was only beginning to form.